Hey guys, it's Miss More White again with another video for AP World History. Today's video is going to be about the introduction to trade. So to really understand some of the movements, some of the political changes, some of the sociological changes that will happen throughout history, we have to understand how trade is going to help with that, interconnect with that, and actually just what trade is. So you'll be seeing different slides of this PowerPoint. It's very short, only about 7 slides today. So we're going to go on through that and check it out. So the first thing, trade. Trade means exchange of goods, services, or both. Trade is also called commerce. So you might have heard the term before, like your city of commerce, basically where your city does a lot of their trading, a lot of their business happens, usually in downtown somewhere, downtown Carson, downtown Gardena, Compton, and downtown Los Angeles as well. All those areas that you guys live in. So trading is greatly important to the global economy. One of the last things that we're going to learn towards the end of the semester is going to be about globalization. So we're going to see how everything in the world is now more connected than it was previously. So previously you have these large groups of the world that have never been contacted by people. They don't even really know what's going on. But as different cultures and different areas and regions start to expand and start to improve their technology, you're going to see that they're going to start to incorporate further places in their trading because they want to expand their marketplaces, get more money off of these people, but then also see what they have they can kind of trade and swap out. All right, so as I said previously, trade is going to be a boon for human interaction, bringing cross-cultural contact to a whole new level. We'll see the spread of religions through trade. We'll see the spread of knowledge, education, art. There's so much that we're going to find out is going to be spread through trade. And it's a beautiful thing. It even happens today. We still trade our culture, our art, a lot of different things. When you think about American culture is everywhere in the world. No matter where you are, you can find a McDonald's for the most part. That's American culture. There are other little things like some of our slang is going to be, traded back and forth because of our music, our culture, and things like that. So trade is still a huge part of interaction and people coming together. All right, so trade originated in prehistoric times. It was the main facility for prehistoric people who bartered goods and services from each other. If I don't have certain things, but someone else does, I might have 4 cows, so I have some cattle. But then somebody else might have the vegetables that I need. So I might trade, one of my cattle to a person who's going to give me grain or who's going to give me vegetables or who's going to give me clothing or things that I need to sustain. And so they may not have had money per se, but they had goods enough to trade. And we'll see that throughout history, that trading, bartering or sharing of those things still happens to this day. All right, so we're going to go on to the next one. All right, the history of international trade. There is evidence of exchange of obsidian, it's like a stone, can't pronounce that right, and flint during the Stone Ages. So flint is what helps you start a fire, and obsidian is going to be used for decoration. I'm sure it has some other value to it, but now we kind of see it more as a decorative stone. And so we're going to see evidence of that all the way back in the Stone Ages. So when we talk about Stone Ages, they're called the Stone Ages because they're using stone tools to, improve or to live and to do anything. So we're going to see the early formation of a will, a very rudimentary or basic will during this time period and things like that. But way back then, they're even going to know about trading and how important it is to culture and society. All right, so those 2 materials are going to be used for creating jewelry. That's going to be traded with Egypt since 3000 BC. So flint is used for fires, but I guess in this case, flint is going to be used for decoration, just like the obsidian, and that's eventually going to be taken from the Stone Ages and then traded all the way into Egypt. All right, and so historians believe that the first long-distance trade occurred between Mesopotamia and the Harappan civilizations of the Indus River Valley, or the Indus Valley, around 3000 BC. So Mesopotamia, that's going to be that original land in between the Tigris and the Euphrates River that we hear about. It's going to be a fluvial area, meaning they have water running through that area that helped to change culture and society and allow people to really flourish and survive because they had a water source close to them. So we're going to see that the Mesopotamians are going to link up with somebody in the Indus Valley. So Indus. If you think about the IND, where is that going to be located? That's going to be located where modern day India is, and that's where that name comes from, the Indus Valley region. Okay, so we're going to see all the way from Mesopotamia, which we consider today like the Middle East, maybe a little bit further west, the Middle East, all the way into India, or in the area that we now know, that peninsula that we now know as India, or that valley. That is a huge, huge, huge window of trading for 3000 BC. So that is when the numbers are starting to go backwards. So we're going to go 3000, 299, 288. So this is a long time ago. But they were able to have the technology and the skills and the know-how to do long distance trading all the way from India into Mesopotamia. All right. And you guys see the maps to the left that show you where India is, where the Indus River Valley is, as well as showing you where Mesopotamia is. You can see how far those are. Those are far today. It takes a long time to get there today, but back then it took even longer, and that shows you their dedication to trading. All right, so from the very beginning of Greek civilization to the fall of the Roman Empire, in the 5th century, a financially worthwhile trade brought valuable spices to Europe from the Far East, including China. So we'll see a lot about spices in Europe. So Europe is going to go throughout the world trading in some places, stealing in others, to get spices that they still don't use today in their food. I don't know if I should have said that, but I did. Anyway, so they're going to go around looking for spices. So during this time period, there are no refrigerators. There are no systems of preserving your food. So you have to eat rotten meat. And the only way to eat rotten meat is to put some spices on it. You just sprinkle a little pepper on it, sprinkle a little curry, and it doesn't smell so bad, and it's edible. All right, so that's literally what's going to happen because they don't have refrigeration and they have to figure out how to preserve their meat and eat their meat. They're going to do a lot of trading for spices. The spices are going to be able to allow them to overcome that rotten taste and rotten smell and enjoy their meal. Now, I don't know how much they use it today, as I said previously, but hey, they were there back then. All right, our next slide is going to be a continuation of the history of international trade. So the fall of the Roman Empire and the succeeding Dark Ages brought insecurity to Western Europe and near end of the trade network. So the Roman Empire, as we'll find out, actually, as you're finding out right now, is going to be a gigantic, huge swath of land. So literally, the Roman Empire goes into Africa, goes into the Middle East, goes all the way through Europe. It goes in certain parts of Middle East. Will stop right there, not Asia so much. But we'll see that it's a gigantic area of land. So when we think about the Roman Empire, we're not thinking about Italy, we're not thinking about Rome, we're thinking about this gigantic area of land, a gigantic area of land that is going to control and dominate whole regions of the world. All right, so as the Roman Empire is going to fall due to mismanagement, due to lots of reasons why empires fall, we're going to have the Dark Ages come up. So the Dark Ages, another interesting time and period. So it's called the Dark Ages because supposedly it was a time in which Europe was lacking knowledge and lacking content and really just lacking direction. Another reason it's called the Dark Ages, kind of racist, is that the Moors who were Muslim and African came up from Africa into the Iberian Peninsula, or in the Spain region, and they controlled Spain and controlled most of Europe. So it's called the Dark Ages because there were black people. Anyway, all right, so the Dark Ages is what's going to happen after the fall of Rome, and they're going to say, hey, I don't know if we can continue on with this trade network. What? But magically, they're going to be able to. So we have the Sogdians are going to rule the east-west trade routes known as the Silk Road from the 4th century AD to the 8th century AD. The Silk Road was originally opened by Zhang Quan and gradually formed in the Han Dynasty between 206 BC and 220 AD. So about a 400-year time period it's going to form in the Han Dynasty, China. So you're going to learn about a lot of Chinese dynasties. This is just the beginning, but you'll see a lot of them over the year. So hopefully you're ready for that and can compartmentalize that. But the Silk Road is going to be probably one of the most important trade routes that's ever happened and ever occurred in our world's history. So the original Silk Road, Silk Roads, it got that name because silk used to travel across the road. But more than just silk. And with the development of silk, that's a whole nother lesson, about how pragmatic or how systemic it was in terms of getting and operating their silk production in certain parts of Asia. So that Silk Road is going to be really that early formation of some of these early trade routes. And over time, the Silk Road is going to grow and expand and be able to link large portions of Asia into Africa and Africa into Europe and things like that. All right, so the Vikings and the Varangians also traded from the 8th to the 11th century as they sailed from the sailed from into Scandinavia. Why was that word so hard? Scandinavia. I know that word. All right, if you don't know that word, now you guys do. Scandinavia. So Vikings sailed to Western Europe while Varangians to Russia. So we'll see that they're going to go in different directions. So the Vikings were known for kind of being attackers or people who were going to ravage and steal and do all that stuff. But actually, they were really good in trading. Okay, so they did a lot of trading once again in Western Europe. And then the Varangians are going to trade in Russia. During this time period, Russia is still very, very unexplored. It's still very isolated. It's still very rural. And it's a cold wilderness. So you have to really be prepared to stay and live or trade in Russia. And we'll talk about Russia because one thing you don't ever want to do in Russia is invade them in the fall or in the winter. And we'll see numerous wars will be lost because countries weren't smart. All right, last one is going to be sailor Vasco da Gama. All right, so he's going to restart the European spice trade in 1498. So that means that it's 1498. That means technology has improved and changed for ships. So previously, they're making a little ship. They're going to hollow out a tree. That's going to be their original ship back in the day. Hollow out a tree, and now I'm able to float because wood floats, or some wood floats. So they're able to hollow that out and they have a little canoe and they're able to move around. After, a long time, hundreds of years of trading and being on the seas, their technology is going to improve. Going to be able to create longer ships that tow more things, that move faster, ships that actually utilize the wind. So they're going to have sailboats for the first time during this time period, where they're not necessarily bound to just, they're not necessarily bound to their certain region. They're able to learn wind patterns, and then from those wind patterns, they can travel throughout the world. One part in your book, in the early parts of the book that we may not get to, it actually shows you all the wind patterns for the whole entire world. And luckily, in Europe and in other parts of the world, actually in Europe and actually across the world, kind of at the same time, they were able to figure out weather patterns and wind maps and things like that, and that allowed them to travel even further and even further away. All right, so once again, Vasco da Gama restarts the European spice trade in 1498. Earlier to his selling around Africa, the flow of spices into Europe was controlled by Islamic powers, especially Egypt. So once again, I was talking about those Moors, the Dark Ages and things like that. So those are the people, the Muslims, that are going to control a lot of the spice trading. But we're going to see with imperialism and colonization, and this 1498 is the beginning of it, because I don't know if you guys remember, but in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So 6 years previous, Columbus has already made his accidental voyage into India, which is actually modern day Dominican Republic and Haiti, or the island of Hispaniola. So we'll see, this is that time period where we're starting to not be as fair and starting to kind of dominate and control based on people's races. And we'll see that happening with the shift from Islamic powers controlling the trading into European powers controlling trading. All right, so trade and transport. Talked a little bit about this previously, but I'm going to go further in depth. The first long distance trade occurred between Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley in Pakistan around 3000 BC, historians believe. Talked about that previously. So once again, they're going to figure out their technology and be able to manipulate the different seas in that region. There are a lot of different seas in that region. You guys can see on the map and see where they're going to be able to travel just by going up one waterway. In the absence of proper roads, so it's called the Silk Road, but they didn't really have any roads, okay? In the absence of proper roads, the most effective way to transport goods from one place to another was by sea. Another thing that we're going to come across too is that once you start doing by land trades, you have to watch out for robbers. Like, they're going to be waiting on you and just ready to attack. So traveling by sea might be the safest thing for this time period. They have pirates and things like that, but they're not nearly going to be as bad as the people who are on land waiting on you. Like, where you at? Where your stuff at? Run that. Give me that. All right, so the first and most expensive trade networks were actually waterways like the Nile, the Tigris, and the Euphrates in present-day Iraq, and the Yellow River in China. All right, so once again, a lot of these places are going to be what we call fluvial or affluvial societies, which means that they started specifically because they had a waterway there. That waterway is important to civilization. It allows them to irrigate crops. It allows them to bathe, to have water, to do all the things that you really need to start building a community and society. So once again, all of the trade networks, for the most part, are going to start in fluvial societies. All right. So fluvial, it's a nice word. It'll make you look really smart on your AP exam if you're able to use it. All right, so once again, the most expensive trade networks started in waterways like the Nile, which is going to be in Egypt, the Tigris and Euphrates, which is going to be in modern day or present day Iraq, and then you have the Yellow River in China. And China also has a lot of other ones, the Yangtze, and I just drew a blank on the other one. But there are a lot of really, really important rivers in China that are going to influence trading as well. All right, so cities grew up in the fertile basins on the borders of those rivers and then expanded by using their watery highways to import and export goods. So as I said previously, fluvial societies are super important because that's where civilization is started for the most part. All right, so the domestication of camels around 1000 BC helped to encourage trade routes overland called caravans and linked India with the Mediterranean. All right, so later on we have those land-based trade routes once they domesticate the camel. So the beautiful thing about the camels is that they're able to store. When I was growing up, I used to believe that camels stored water in their humps. In actuality, camels don't. But anyway, when I was growing up, I really believed, I was like, man, those 2-hump camels, they'll never get dehydrated because when one of the humps goes down, they have another one. Unfortunately, hate to break it to you, camels' humps have like fat in them and not water. But camels in general are just able to be more sustained without needing water, which is going to be very important when you're traveling through desert and hot regions, specifically like in India and the Mediterranean. So once again, that once they domesticate camels, four-legged animals. When they domesticate camels, then they're able to then have a longer by land trade route. And those are going to be called caravans. You'll hear about this all the time. And then we'll talk about caravan cities. So if you're a caravan city, that means you're going to be a meeting point for trade that happens throughout your area and in your region. All right, 2 more to go. All right, so one more, the overview of the Silk Road. The Silk Road is going to be a vast trade network connecting Eurasia and North Africa via land and sea routes. The Silk Road earned its name from Chinese silk, a highly valued commodity that merchants transported along these trade routes. Advances in technology and increased political stability caused an increase in trade. The opening of more trade routes caused travelers to exchange many things like animals, spices, ideas, and diseases. So we didn't talk about the disease part, but with trade, obviously comes diseases. The plague, it's going to spread through the different trade routes a few times. And you're going to see other things that are going to eventually be passed on via trade. Okay. More about that later. All right, and the final thing is just going to be a map of the Silk Road. So you can see part of the borders all the way to the east in China and how it goes in different directions, and then up through what they call the Imperial Highway. So it's called the Imperial Highway because that's where the empire was in China. That's where all the important things are happening in China. It's going to go up, up, up through the Imperial Highway, and then we're going to start to notice that we're kind of entering into what we would call like the Middle East today, and then it's going to drop on down into the Himalayas, into India, the Great Royal Road, and all the way into the Bay of Bengal, where they're able to drop down, go around the peninsula of India, and then tap into Africa. All right. So that is a map of what we're talking about right now. And thank you all for paying attention and listening. Hope you have a great day.